In fact, let me ask you the question first, and then I'll get into the topics that I was going to get into. We went to Michigan for Thanksgiving, visited my brothers and their families. Went to Christmas in Portland. Went to Portland for Christmas holidays, and visited our 3 kids and my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law, and just generally had a marvelous time. But it raises an interesting question. Is it possible in this day and age for anybody who is actually politically aware and all-American, as opposed to fascist, to be friends with Trump supporters? Now, I ask this dead serious. This is not some facetious, bizarre question. Louise and I were sitting in a public place where we not uncommonly sit. I don't want to get too specific about this. Back, I think it was just the day or two before my surgery. So it was, anyhow, it was a week or two ago. And a fellow we know, we're not, friends with, but acquaintances with, just out of the clear blue sky, who I know is a Trump supporter. He's like, one of these, rough, tough pickup truck guys, right? I mean, that's his whole persona. And we started talking about something that had nothing to do with politics or anything else, because we try to avoid talking politics when talking to this guy. And he just, like, out of the clear blue sky, he's like, yeah, I had this Mexican woman the other day, and she was telling me how I have white privilege. And I went through the list, all the privileges that Mexicans have in this country. That she doesn't have to pay taxes, that she can get welfare, that her kids can go to school, they can become citizens. And he goes through this list, right? And I'm like, oh, my God, he's doing the Sean Hannity show at me. And, we just kind of sat there and let him get it off his chest. And when he was all done, he was like, guess I showed her, or words to that effect, or, we need to educate these people. And he went off to get a drink, and Louise's comment to me was something like, are we ever going to be able to have a reasonable conversation with this man? I'm increasingly thinking the answer is no. And it's not like, hey, I'm some kind of Hillary partisan or Bernie partisan or Democratic partisan who just hates Republicans. Not that at all. I mean, there's a couple of conservatives, Brian Pruitt, who's come into this studio and been on our program a couple of times. Who's the economist guy? Shano, you remember his name? He was in the studio last week. You'll have to speak louder. I can't hear you. Yeah, Charles Sauer. Thank you. Charles Sauer, comes in the studio. He has been on our program a number of times. He and I disagree strongly on politics, mostly on economics. But he's a thoughtful, decent man. And frankly, I don't know if he voted for Trump or not. I know that Brian actually probably didn't, or at least he said he wouldn't, even though Brian is a Republican. So it's not like, I'm trying to indict all Trump supporters or something like that, or say that all Democrats should just refuse to talk to Trump supporters. But there is an ugliness afoot in this country right now. And, it's been documented to at some level by the people at the Southern Poverty Law Center about, the rise in hate crimes and things like that. And, people of color, people who are conspicuously gay, just having the crap beat out of them while people yell Trump, Trump, Trump at them. And things like that. And I'm guessing, I'm pretty sure that I know of at least one of my relatives. Now, this is not one of my kids. This was when we were in Michigan. But I'm pretty sure that I know at least one of my relatives voted for Donald Trump. The reason I think that that's the case is because every time the conversation went to politics, which it did about 3/4 of the time for Thanksgiving, he would just be totally silent. But he's a decent guy too. And I think that he was like one of these hopeful folks, right? There's some hopeful folks out there who are, like Lori Wallach, globaltradewatch.org, or tradewatch.org is the website, public citizen, citizen.org/trade. Lori Wallach just issued a news release a couple of days ago about how Trump has selected for himself a trade representative, a guy to replace the guy, the outgoing trade representative who used to be Barack Obama's college roommate, who is, the current guy is, gung-ho for TPP and neoliberalism and international trade deals, and how Trump has appointed a guy who is willing to go against a Republican orthodoxy, even though the vast majority of people in Trump's cabinet support so-called free trade. His trade representative doesn't, and has a history of slapping down people in his own party, Republicans, for saying, this whole neoliberal thing, that you guys came up with back in the 80s, the kind of, Reaganism, and then the Democratic Party did their version of it with the DLC. It sucks. It doesn't work. So it seems to me that there are, there's probably no shortage, frankly, particularly given that during the last 3 weeks of the election, there's no shortage probably of well-intentioned Trump voters. And I say that because during the last 3 weeks of the election, the Trump campaign did something really, really smart. They ripped off, they had started off by ripping off Reagan's original slogan. Reagan's original slogan in 1980 was, "Let's make America great again. Let us make America great again." Well, Trump is not about us. He's about me. So he got rid of the let's. So it just became "Make America Great Again." Right? In other words, Trump will do that. The last 3 weeks of the election, though, they were running these ads on TV, and I'm guessing you saw them, where it's Donald Trump talking about, "I'm going to bring your jobs back. I'm going to protect your Social Security. Republicans like to go after Medicare and Medicaid. I'm going to stop them. We are once again going to be respected in the world." In other words, a backhand swipe at George W. Bush. It was a brilliant ad. If I was politically uninformed and I saw that ad, I might even be inclined to vote for Donald Trump myself. But then there are the people who are voting for him because they know, like he knows, that all Mexicans are rapists. I need to start a segment, wisdom of people who drive for Uber. It's just amazing. The guy who drove me into work this morning, he came to the United States at the age of 13. He's a U.S. citizen. He came from a country in West Africa. I don't want to get too specific here. And he was like, it used to be during Clinton's presidency, I traveled around the world on an American passport, and everybody loved me. He said, now I show an American passport, and people are like, get the hell out of here. He said it used to be that everybody understood that immigrants actually have a lower rate of crime than do natural-born citizens, which is statistically true, by the way. He said, now Trump's got everybody convinced it's the opposite. He said, I'm taking crap from people all over the place because I have an accent. And I've been in this country since I was 13 years old. I'm in my 50s now, and I've never committed a crime. And he just was going off on it. And I was like, yeah. It's like so the question for our first hour, and then I've got almost 2 weeks worth of stories I want to share with you. Amazing stuff going on. Things I learned about, for example, NSAIDs, these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, aspirin and stuff. Just all kinds of stuff that I've learned that I want to share with you. So stick around. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
But are you finding that there are people with whom you may have to just close the door because of their Trump support?